hope is that during the course of this year, we're going to be able to work with all 50 senators, because all of you have a stake in this, to just see where are our manufacturing opportunities and where can we plug some holes in order to make sure that we're competitive internationally. Specifically on clean energy, we know that's an opportunity. I continue to believe, and I'm not alone in this, that the country that figures out most rapidly new forms of energy and can commercialize new ideas is going to lead the 21st century economy. I think that is our growth model.
Final question.
But hold on, sorry, just one last thing I want to say about this. In order for us to maximize it, part of it is the good work that Jeff's been doing in terms of just finding the right incentives. We've got to be open-minded about a whole range of technologies. We've got to look at clean coal technology. We've got to look at nuclear technology. We're going to be making some significant announcements this year. This is an example, Blanche, of where we can't be stuck in the past in terms of how we see these things. We're not going to be able to ramp up solar and wind to suddenly replace every other energy source anytime soon, and the economy still needs to grow. So we've got to look at how to make existing technologies and options better. But, and this is just the point that I want to make because it came up in New Hampshire yesterday, we still, one of the best ways to be on the forefront in energy is to incentivize clean energy and discourage the old sources or methods that aren't going to work in the future. And so the fact that Joe Lieberman is working with Lindsey Graham, John Kerry has been all over this. The three of them are coming together to try to find a workable bipartisan structure so that we are incentivizing and rewarding the future and understanding that there's a transition so that we've got to make sure that the disruptions are minimized as we move into this new energy future. That's going to be vital. So don't give up on that. I don't want us to just say the easy way out is for us to just give a bunch of tax credits to clean energy companies. The market works best when it responds to price. And if they start seeing that, you know what, dirty energy is a little pricier, clean energy is a little cheaper, they will innovate and they will think things through in all kinds of innovative ways. So I want to congratulate specifically John Kerry, Joe Lieberman, and Lindsey Graham, who it probably doesn't help him for me to compliment him, but has been very thoughtful in terms of how they're approaching this issue. So.
Final question, Evan Bayh, Indiana.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. President. We've run overtime. Is this okay without a mic?
Here you go. Here, pass that over.
Wait, no, we can get you a mic. Yeah. Nice sneakers, by the way.
Thank you. Got to stay light on your feet around here, right? Mr. President, you've already addressed this in part, and several of the other questioners have raised this, but I'd like to present it in a little bit different way that I think is on the minds of people in my state and perhaps on the minds of independents and moderate Republicans and conservative Democrats around the country, and that's this issue of the deficit and rising debt and restoring the fiscal health of this country to a position where it ought to be. Frankly, I think the public and average citizens have been way ahead of the political class on this. They understand in the long run this is unsustainable. It's bad economics. They understand that generationally, as Michael was mentioning, it's unfair to our children to ask them to pay these bills. And most of all, there's a sense of unfairness. They're having to make sacrifices in their daily lives, but too many in Washington expect to have continuing increases in the programs they care about. Ordinary citizens are making sacrifices, and yet we want our earmarks or pet projects. And they ask, why can't Washington make the same sacrifices that we're willing to make? Now, I think they realize that the other party doesn't have much credibility on this subject. They handed you a $1.3 trillion deficit. Vice President Cheney famously said that in his opinion, deficits didn't matter. He just flat out said it. That's wrong. It's bad economics. It's wrong. And so we've got a job to do. But I think many people across the country candidly look at us and say, Well, I don't know if the Democrats are willing to take this on. You know, they think we want to tax too much and spend too much, and do we have the backbone to really stand up and make some of these hard decisions? Now, to your credit, you've called for some things that aren't always popular in our party. The first thing I noticed when you put into effect that non-security discretionary spending freeze is you got kicked in the shins by some of the left-wing blogs, and you called for more restraint on earmarks. That's not always popular among our group. But to your credit, you've called for those things. So my question to you, Mr. President, is speaking to independents, conservative Democrats, moderate Republicans, people who know we have to do this, why should the Democratic Party be trusted, and are we willing to make some of the tough decisions to actually head this country in a better direction?
Well, I'll tell you why the Democratic Party should be trusted, because the last time this budget was balanced, it was under a Democratic president who made some very tough decisions. So, I think this is pretty straightforward. Bill Clinton made some very hard political decisions. Some of you were there in Congress. You know how tough those votes were. You got no help from the other side. But as a consequence, the economy took off, and you had a $200 billion surplus at the end of his presidency. So I think he deserves enormous credit for that. Those of you who took those votes deserve enormous credit for that. That's why we should have credibility. But we're still haunted by the debates that took place from the 70s, the 60s, right? And that hasn't completely worked through the political mindset. So we're still saddled with this notion of the tax and spend model, when if you actually look at it, we've been very fiscally responsible. Now, having said that, we have been complicit in some ways over the last decade. I mean, the prescription drug bill, not paid for. 2 wars, not paid for. 2 tax cuts, not paid for. The emergence of a structural deficit that is only going to grow, because we all know that the biggest drivers are Medicare and Medicaid, and as people get older, as the population gets older, and as new technologies come online, people are demanding new services for health care. Those are going to become more and more expensive, and that's what's going to blow up the budget in the long term. So to answer your question, how do we, having said that, there's no doubt that we've lost trust. And part of it was just, look, bad timing. It's like the cartoon, right? You're sort of standing there and somebody suddenly hands you a ticking time bomb, and it explodes, and you've got all this gunpowder on your hands, and you didn't construct the bomb, but you're holding it. And so what happened last year was, we come in, you got a $1.3 trillion deficit that we're inheriting. You've got $3 trillion revenue that are lost because of the recession.